thanks so much for joining us again on the Buzzworthy Women Podcast. Today, I have an amazing guest, Angela Burgess. Angela is the CEO of Broad Oaks Consulting. Angela, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about you, how you got to be this amazing CEO that you are and all the fun stuff that you're doing.
Thank you. Well, as you said, I am the president and CEO of Broad Oaks Consulting. I started Broad Oaks in 2018, left a successful career to start my own business. I think like so many of your listeners, I would imagine. And fun fact, I just learned the other day that it's something like 90% of businesses don't make it past the 5-year mark.
Yes, I unfortunately know that.
I was doing some research for a presentation and all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I feel really good about myself now.
I know. I always, every year of business, I'm like, okay, what's the year mark? Okay, I'm still good, right? Like, right? Here we are. We're still making it past.
Yep. And I think what's interesting to me is how much my business has evolved in 5 years. In reality, 5 years really isn't that long. When I started Broad Oaks Consulting, and what we do, which is probably of interest, so we work with nonprofits that are looking to scale and grow their revenue stream so that they're long-term sustainable. And the name came about, I was, I decided to start this business and had no idea what I was going to call it. And everybody said, oh gosh, well, just use your initials or use your name. And I didn't like that for a variety of reasons. And then one day I was, at home and I was just famished. And so I went to get, like normal people, right? A bacon cheeseburger, of course.
Absolutely.
So there's a place here in Houston called Vex Prime, and there are several locations, but the one closest to me is at this really busy street. And Houston is just like a concrete jungle. It's just concrete and asphalt everywhere. So I'm pulling through the drive-through lane and, made my order, waiting for my burger. And I'm sitting there and I look, and to my left at Vex Prime, in the midst of this, I think the street is 6 or 8 lanes across plus a turning lane. There are 2 300-year-old oak trees. Oh. And it's always fascinated me that you have to think, so for 300 years, someone has seen the value in those trees and the beauty that they add enough to care for them and steward them and nurture them and water them and feed them. And so they add this beautiful canopy. When you dine in restaurant, they built a deck around it. And it got me to thinking, that's really what nonprofits are. Nonprofits provide this service, this beauty, this opportunity for people within the community. But if we don't care for them, they won't be around to serve.
I love that. I love that in so many ways, because the evolution of your story and your brand and your business ties into the end result of who you're helping and serving, to then have the longevity of not only yourself, but to help these nonprofits help other people in the community and all of those things. So it's almost like that full circle, if you will.
It really is. It really is. I guess what I started telling you too, the evolution of my own business. So when I started, I didn't have any clients. Here's me. I'm in Chicago one day. I decide I'm definitely going to start my own business. I quit my job and fly home, say to my husband, like, hey, babe, how was your business trip? Oh, it's great. I quit my job. He's like, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to start a business. He said, what do you know about starting a business? Absolutely nothing. Then he said, how many clients do you have? Zero.
But
it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead.
It's something about, I was just going to say, sorry to cut you off, but it's like something about like women, like, I don't know what it is. And I think our listeners can understand. It's like, I have this idea. I know it's going to work and I'm going to make it work. So it's like, let's go. Right. Yep. And your like spouse, significant other, husband, whoever is always like, wait a second. Are you sure you got this under control? You're like, I got this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing too. You have to take big risks if you want big things out of life. And you do have to constantly be evaluating. That first, so that was in July of 2018. The first client I signed, I think I looked back the other day, I think the contract was for something like $1,700 a month before taxes. and it only lasted for 4 months. And, obviously that's not a whole heck of a lot, but within a year, I had built a 6-figure business. And as I was learning in that process, I realized that the way I had built the business, it was great for the clients, but it wasn't scalable for me. So at the end of 2020, I have to look back at this. So I think it was the end of 2021. Yes. I decided to completely rework the business model. And so I had to let go of several contracts and let go of clients to give me the capacity to be able to do that. And that was scary too. But it's that, like you were saying, that evolutionary process. It's sort of the idea, going back to trees, you have to prune them to get them to keep growing and keep growing. And that was something for me. I actually started my career in wealth management, and in working with my own book and then working with a group of advisors, you were constantly encouraging them to prune their books and to cut down on the number of clients they were serving so that they would have room and capacity to grow. And it's a hard concept, I think, to wrap your mind around.
Yeah. Have you always been working with the nonprofits, and why did you go that route?
No, I started my career actually in wealth management back in 2003. I'm a native Iowan, and getting out of college, I wanted to work for the largest single employer in the state of Iowa. And at the time, that was Principal Financial Group. And I started in institutional 401ks, doing the understanding investing and enrollment meetings for Principal. From there, I became a financial advisor. By 25, I was managing an office in Kansas City, recruiting more, we called them agents on the insurance industry, recruiting agents to come and work for us. And then in 2008, I left and went to Smith Barney to run one of their largest offices on the North Shore of Chicago. So my first decade of my career was 100% corporate, 80 hours a week, climbing the corporate ladder, in the management sphere of Smith Barney in the wirehouse, and Principal on the insurance side, which is a whole different experience, I think, as a woman in that industry, especially in management. I stayed on with Morgan Stanley for a year and then left and joined MetLife Investors, and took the insurance background and the capital markets background and really blended them, and just did ultra high net worth wealth and estate transfer planning for about a year.
Nice.
And I think for me, I always knew that at some point I would leave wealth management to do something, I always said, more altruistic with my life. The time came a little sooner than I had anticipated. But there was this kind of aha moment where it's like, really all I do is help wealthy people become wealthier. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, that's a great thing to do. And certainly I think it's a noble thing that many people do. I'm married to someone in wealth management, but it just wasn't for me.
Yeah. And so you had that calling for the nonprofit to really give back, to support those people who help in the local areas.
Yes. So I left that job. I remember I called my boss to tell him that I was resigning, and I knew him pretty well at this point. And I said, Dan, I said, are you driving right now? And he said, yes. And I said, would you pull over for a minute? And he was super annoyed, right? And so he did. He pulled the car over, and I said, well, I'm calling to submit my resignation. And he said, well, I'm not overly surprised, but what are you going to be doing? And I said, well, I've decided to leave our industry and go work for a nonprofit. There was this deadline on the other end, Tori. I mean, there was just silence. And then the next thing he said, I'm so glad you told me to pull over.
Oh my gosh.
I took a 66% pay cut. I left. I had no idea, if I was going to like it, if I was going to be successful at it. But I went to work for Mercy Home for Boys and Girls in Chicago, Illinois, as their director of planned giving, which for me was sort of a perfect fit, because instead of working with people on the investment side to help them be more efficient with their assets and help them accumulate wealth, I was still kind of doing the same thing, only I was helping them protect their families as well as find ways to give to the charities about which they care most.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you could, with your background, advise and kind of be mindful of the financial and the wealth aspect of what's coming into their organization, how to manage that, how to know when to look for additional resources for support and all of that. So I'm sure you came, with more experience than you really thought that you had, but you were bringing so much value into that space, even though it was a new industry or space for you.
And I think that's the fun thing for me about fundraising. If you talk about putting the fun in fundraising, I really, really love the conversations with the donors. And what's interesting is that a lot of donors feel like when someone from a nonprofit or a charity shows up on their doorstep that, it turns my stomach, but I hear my colleagues, my professional fundraising colleagues, refer to themselves as the chief begging officer. It just drives me crazy because giving, there's so much opportunity in giving for everyone all the way around. And if we approach it from a mentality of plenty versus scarcity, there's so much that you can do. And it was fun for me because once I got to know the donors and got to know their kids, it's this tremendous opportunity to help them, the donor, do first and foremost what they want to do for their kids. And then secondly, benefit the charities and get their kids involved in the charities that they're already involved in.
Absolutely. So I want to touch back a little bit on you mentioned that you had to restructure your business.
Yes.
So talk about the starting part of your business and when you realized that you needed to make a change, so that, because I'm sure there's lots of people who are either in the midst of it or kind of on that spectrum of like, I started the business, it's successful, but it's not the long-term success that I need. Right. So I'd love to hear your kind of breaking point, transition point.
Sure. So in my business, and I think it's the same for a lot of business owners, people hire me to work with me. And I'm a really good fundraiser. It starts for me with, I have to understand structurally what's happening within an organization first. What I tell all my clients is, I can build the most beautiful fundraising plan in the world for you, but if you don't have the infrastructure to support it, you're not going to be successful. And I think you see that with a lot of consultants. So backing up, I left nursing home after 7 years and started this business in 2018. But I think you see that with a lot of consultants. They come in and identify the problem and leave, or they come in and give you a fundraising plan that you have no ability to execute whatsoever. So my niche was being able to come into an organization, figure out what's happening, and then develop a custom plan that would actually get them to where they wanted to go. Part of that is I've always been very good with words. I love to write. I love public speaking. I'm that weird person that loves public speaking. I like communicating. I like messaging, and I like to tell stories. And that's how people understand the world. It's how we understand what motivates us, what compels us, what we don't like. And so it's easy for me to craft a story for a nonprofit, but in terms of the visual execution of that, I am not a visual person. So I was writing all this amazing copy for clients and helping them start to get their messaging straight. But then when a donor would go to their website or, connect with other board members, I found that the messaging was very unclear. So that disconnect then had me thinking like, okay, well, clearly I need to get stronger on visual marketing and communications. Tori, there are some things that we just will never be good at.
That's true.
Right? So I had this idea that maybe I needed to partner with a marketing and communication firm. The other thing is that because I'm only one person, there are only so many clients I can take on. Right. So, and I had to work really hard, especially at year end, where it's a highly competitive time for nonprofits to give, because Americans have yet to figure out that you can donate to charity year round. It's not just in the last month of the year. It's a really noisy space. So to stand out, you have to have all this like great communication. And I was, okay, so this is bizarre. Your listeners may find this bizarre. Some may identify with this. One morning, I'm an Audible junkie. Like I listen to books like they're going out of style.
Yeah.
And one morning my book ran out and I didn't really have time to look for another book. And I had never listened to a podcast before. And so I got on my phone, opened up the Apple podcast thing, selected a category, selected a podcast, and hit play. I just wanted something to listen to while I was doing my hair and makeup, which is now the most boring thing on the face of the earth after, 35 years of doing this. So this podcast came on and there was this woman talking who I'd never heard of before. And it was like a light bulb just went off in my head. And I thought, this woman is amazing. She knows what she's doing and she knows how to grow businesses and scale businesses. And she was talking about her book. So her name is Dory Clark. Her book is The Long Game. She has a couple other ones too, but that was the one she was talking about in this.
Yeah.
And we went out for a walk the next day and I'm listening to the book. And all of a sudden I had this aha moment about all of the things that were sucking up my time and how can I automate those things?
Right.
Give a better experience for my client, more impact, and reduce the amount of time that I was spending with each individual client. And I thought, I can do this. This is doable. I couldn't do it with the current client load I had, which is why I had to, pare that down at the end of the year. But it was completely doable. And it was through listening to stories of the ways that other people had figured out how to streamline content. And really, I think I've learned as much from Dory just from observing her as I have, reading her books and participating in some of her workshops.
Yeah, I've listened to her podcast as well, and on her guesting on other podcasts. She's amazing.
She's so amazing.
Yeah. So is that partially what inspired you to write your own book?
I've always wanted to write a book. I just didn't know how to do it. And this year, Chris Colley at Game Changer Publishing reached out to me and said, hey, would you be willing to write a book? And so I've always wanted to do it, but I don't know how, and I don't know what the topic would be. And she really walked me through step by step how to do that. I think the reason I've always wanted to write a book is that there's so many parts of my life that when I share them with people, people find them inspiring. Everyone's always like, oh my gosh, you should write a book about that. And so it's always been in the back of my mind, but I never really knew how to get 250 pages down.
So tell us about the book. So
I still don't know that I know how to get 250 pages down.
Yeah. Well, you did it. You're a best-selling author. You totally did
it. I did. So the book is called, here, I'm going to grab it. So here's the book. It's called, oh, where's the camera? Are You on the Right Bus? Navigating Change on the Road to Success. And it is a motivational autobiography. It follows my career. I always say that if you looked at my resume on paper, it either looks like I'm severely ADD or that I fail a lot and then I have to start over a lot. But the opposite is actually true. I think for me, I've always been someone who followed what I was passionate about. And I think when you do that, if you follow your passion, others will see that passion in you and the rest has a way of working itself out. But consequently, you do have to leave some things behind that maybe are societal values. And I think in entrepreneurship, that's a really, really difficult thing to confront and to be okay with.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I love the title because it reminds me of, oh gosh, I forget what it's from, but it's basically like, are you in the right seat in your business? Right? Yep. Like I think it's the EOS process and the traction of, finding the right people, the right seat, and the right role. So
I had to look it up. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it was Jim Collins in Good to Great.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So it's so important too. And making sure you own who you are and you understand what your zone of genius is or your niche or whatever you want to call it, so that you're in the right seat, on the right bus, headed in the right direction for the success that you are, deserving to give and to receive.
Yes. And I don't know about you, but it always baffles me and I've been fortunate. I'm not going to tell you that I've loved every job I ever had. But then again, I started working when I was 13. But at the same time, I've always liked the jobs that I had. There was one job that I really struggled with that I talk about in the book, but I'm sure you see it all the time. You talk to people that say, I hate my job. I hate going to work. It's just something I do. And I do think depending on where you're from and the kind of family that you're born into, work isn't something that's meant to be enjoyed. Work is something that you do so you can provide for your family, so that you can get benefits. And then you're waiting in your life to get to that retirement point where then you finally get to enjoy. And I think to a degree that was a little bit of the way my parents felt about their jobs. I mean, I don't think that they hated them, but they didn't get out of bed every morning going like, oh my gosh, what can I accomplish today? Right? Who do I get to talk to today? And I think that's something that for me, I always wondered, well, couldn't your work be something that helps you create the kind of purpose-driven life that you're looking for and is something that excites you? And I mean, we all have bad days, but for the most part, you know, I think it is very possible. But in order to get to that place, I think what happens is you get on board this bus and you get excited about it, but then it makes all these stops and some passengers get off and others get on. And the next thing you know, you're going to a destination you never intended to visit.
Right. Yeah. And I think you're totally right on in the sense of like, you know, I don't know if it's generational or geographically or like family based, but like exactly like you said, like sometimes people look at their job as a job, not a career or a passion or something that they just do to provide to get to that retirement age, like you said, to enjoy life. But it's almost like there's been a recent shift where people are like, no, don't even buy into that. Like, life's too short, you know, like let's live in the moment. Let's do the things that we love and that we're passionate about so that we can enjoy where we are now. Because yeah, it's like, and I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if it's just the things have shifted because of our world and like everything that's been going on, or if it's a generational thing, or, you know, there's so many more entrepreneurs in this space. And that's really, you know, driving that. People in the entrepreneur space are making their own jobs. They're making their own career. They're finding the passions that they love and they're doing it every day. So it's just interesting to think back at that perspective.
And I 100% agree with you. And I remember pre-pandemic hearing this story on NPR about the new gig economy. And it always makes me think about how the world is changing. But part of the reason that I was prompted to write this book I'd have to look back, I think it was 2021. No, it's probably 2020. I was invited to speak to a group of high school students about entrepreneurship, and to go in and talk to them about the process of starting my business and what I do. And I think it is kind of interesting for youth that I own a for-profit business that works with nonprofits. It's a side of the world that you don't see very often. We have this preconceived notion as a society that if you work nonprofit, you can't make any money, which is 100% not true. Even working for nonprofits, I mean, you have major gift officers and advanced giving officers at large universities making six figures, you know, making really, really great incomes. Anyway, at the end of that presentation, so it's this room full of just highly intelligent, very motivated sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school. And the first question that they asked me was, what do you do when your parents are encouraging you to follow a path that's safe and secure, but it's not your passion?
Oh, wow.
And I think too, to your point, from certain socioeconomic backgrounds, parents want a better life for their children than what they had, and they don't want it to be as risky. I mean, especially if you're a first generation kid here, your parents risked a lot to get you here. And so they're saying, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a nurse, be, you know, something that's going to have dependable income with benefits. They're not saying, yes, go out and explore your passion for art, right? Or become an author. And I get that, but then I feel bad for this generation of kids because, again, back to what you were saying, I think we now live in a society where we're embracing entrepreneurship, and we're embracing that gig economy, and we're embracing creativity and following your passion. And so on one hand, and I can't even imagine what it's like to be a teenager on social, because we didn't have that, right? So on one hand, you're getting all these messages over here about, you know, yes, you can do anything and you can follow your passion and live your dreams. And you can create your own future. But then at home, and generally speaking, those are the relationships we value the most. You have your parents saying, find something safe, find something secure, find something reliable that you can depend on. And I can imagine that that's a really difficult bridge for kiddos to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're so on. Yeah. I, I can't even imagine, and then children are dealing with this, right? So the youth are having these thoughts and conversations, but I think also like young 20, 30, 40-year-olds, we're still kind of tiptoeing into this world as well too, where
Oh
we've
yeah,
been ingrained in the security of a corporate job, and
right.
now hearing that we can do our own thing and follow our passions is like, oh, are we sure we can do that? So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think at our age too, it's even harder because you started your career in some sort of corporate environment for most of us where you have health insurance and 401k and 401k matching, and maybe you even have a defined benefit plan. So then the idea of stepping away from that is, how long can I step away from all of that and still have that security that I'm seeking on down the road? Or can I get those benefits elsewhere? And I think for most of us, it takes time to start and build a business where you can then provide benefits to yourself. Or if you're going to create a company where you're employing people, that's a whole nother set of regulations. And I do find it fascinating. I feel like as entrepreneurs, we're sort of gluttons for punishment because I had somebody, this is hilarious. I was having a technical issue with my computer one day and just happened to be on the phone with my husband, who works for a huge wealth management company. And someone was in his office and they actually said to me on speakerphone, they're like, "Why don't you call your IT department?" And I'm like, that would be me.
Oh,
And
that's cute.
I don't know how to solve this.
Oh my
But
gosh.
people miss that. You are the CFO, the CEO, you're the marketing coordinator, the brand
Tech.
ambassador,
Yeah. Yeah.
the tech, the everything. And it is a lot, but it is doable. I think, especially when you take it in bite-sized pieces. If I had one piece of advice for other entrepreneurs, it's to look at your business model and figure out. So what I ended up doing that made me able to grow and scale my business, there are certain things that are true for every nonprofit, like generally true. And I spend a lot of time educating clients on what those things are. And after about 3 years of that, I got really tired of saying the same things over and over and over again. It was boring to me, but it was revolutionary for them. And
Right.
so what I did was I created an online course. So I now have a curriculum-based approach to consulting. And it's great for clients because they have a schedule set.
Mhm.
They know that they go through learning, coaching, implementation, learning, coaching, implementation. So they're taking, rather than feeling like they're drinking from a fire hose, they're taking everything in bite-sized pieces, but they also have the time to actually implement what we're talking about. And I think that's the other thing that we see amiss in a lot of consulting relationships is the consultant comes in, tells you everything that's wrong, maybe even gives you a map to fix it, but then leaves. And you're so caught up in the day-to-day running of your business, and nonprofits are short-staffed always to begin with,
Already. Yeah.
the implementation piece just becomes impossible.
Yeah.
So that's what I did to create that scalability. For me, then, rather than spending 2 hours in the car commuting to a client back and forth, and then 4 hours on site with them a week, I now spend an hour every other week on a coaching call with them. And they're getting a far better experience. They have lifetime access to the course. So it also creates continuity in hiring.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone can access that. Everyone's speaking the same language. Everyone understands why we're doing what we're doing. And it's really been, we've gotten great feedback from clients. It's been highly effective. But I would say that's the biggest thing. Like, what is it that you do every day that's the same for all of your clients? And how can you create a system to replicate that you don't have to be an active part of every single day?
That is a great piece of advice. I think everybody listening needs to listen to that and apply it because it's so beneficial and something that is not necessarily difficult, but it's something that we overlook and we don't think about. But if you really step back and implement that strategy or that process or that thought process, it will make a difference for your business and everything moving forward.
Thank you.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, so let me wrap this up and tell us how people can find your book, get connected with you if they want to learn more about you, if they have a nonprofit, that they want to get some coaching and help from you, how can they get in touch?
Absolutely. So you can visit our website, which is just broadoaksconsulting.com, all one word, /book. There's a webpage for the book. The book is also on Amazon, on Paperbook and Kindle, and it is in hardcover on Barnes & Noble, if you like hardcover books. On the website, there's a button in the upper right-hand corner that says start the conversation. So if you're a nonprofit professional, if you serve on a board and you're looking for someone to help elevate your business, certainly just click on that link and you can get on my calendar for a conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest and sharing your knowledge and insight and just having a fun conversation. And thank you again. Just happy to be connected and have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Tori. This was a great experience.